Now that I've captured your attention, let's take a look at this deck. Welcome to Outmaneuver, I'm Faith, and today we're here looking at a Bossk Cunning deck. Bossk is an aggression villainy leader, which can deploy if you control 5 resources. When Bossk is not deployed, he's got an action, which you can exhaust him and deal 1 damage to a unit with a bounty. You may give it +1/+0 for this phase. When you deploy Bossk, he's a 4/6 underworld bounty that has an effect. When you collect a bounty, you may collect that bounty again. Use this ability only once each round. So if you're going to be building a Bossk deck, clearly it's going to be requiring of your opponent's units to have the bounty keyword. Well, there are some cards that have bounty. Not a lot of them are going to see play. And so you're going to need to find a way to give your opponent's units bounty. This is where bounty cards are going to come in handy. Bossk's ability to double that bounty while he's deployed is a very interesting, fun, and potentially strong ability that will definitely influence the way that you make decisions in the game, but can have a massive payoff when you get it to hit. The base which we're using in this build is Petronaki Arena. Petronaki Arena is a 26 HP base and has an ability with each leader unit you control gets +1/+0. Bossk already deploys as a 4/6, and with Boba's ban, Bossk's 4/6 stat line is a very chunky but quite aggressive stat line, particularly in that power department. There are 2 other leaders which deploy at 5, which come in so far with a 4/6 stat line. Those are Finn and Pre-Vizsla. Neither of those leaders really see much play. Pre-Vizsla is still new, but Bossk we have seen play, and one of the benefits is his good and efficient stat line. With 1 less HP than Boba, with Petronaki Arena, he now becomes a 5/6, meaning that he's going to hit harder, and he's going to represent quite a powerful unit, which can be problematic for your opponent. His 5 power can take out a Sabine in 1 attack, for instance, or it can just put pressure on your opponent's base. If we're playing Bossk as our leader, as mentioned, we're going to need bounties. So on the screen, I'm going to show you the 4 bounty cards which I like in these colors. Most bounties that we're going to play are going to be upgrades that we're going to put onto our opponent's units. However, the first card here, Bounty Posting, is actually an event. This event lets us search our deck for a bounty upgrade, reveal it, and draw it. We can then also play that upgrade. This is a 1-cost event, which, while not a bounty itself, will allow us to have a toolbox approach to our bounties that we do include, rather than having to use the bounty that we draw and hopefully it fits the situation we're in. Bounty posting allows us to have a more dynamic response to the situation at hand and getting us the bounty that we need in that situation, rather than hope that the card fits the situation that we're in. Now let's look at the upgrade bounties that we include in our deck. Our first bounty here is Guild Target, which is a 0-cost aggression upgrade. When we defeat or capture the unit with Guild Target attached to it, we can deal 2 damage to a base. If that unit is unique, however, we deal 3 damage instead. One of the benefits of this card is it's going to cost 0. So with our bounty posting, if we just pay that 1 resource, we can just grab this Guild Target and put it on one of our opponent's units. As we saw earlier, Bossk has an ability to deal a damage to a unit with a bounty on it, and it also allows us to double those bounties when he's deployed. So having the ability to get things out there cheaply can be very helpful in dealing damage to units, or when Bossk is flipped, using Guild Target to hopefully deal up to 6 damage to our opponent's base. Up next, we've got Rich Reward. This upgrade costs 1, and when we defeat or capture the opponent's unit, we can give an experience token to each of up to 2 units. This is going to help our units become bigger, going to allow them to maybe survive more, and more importantly, to be able to hit stronger on our opponent's base. There are going to be cards in here which are going to have potential to ready up a second time. And so putting experience counters on those units can be powerful, because then they're going to get to hit multiple times at that higher power value. Again, this is an upgrade which can be doubled by Bossk and allowing us to get our units twice as strong. Of note, when this bounty doubles, we can choose either 2 different units, so we can choose 4 units total, or we can choose 2 units twice when Bossk doubles the effect. The final bounty that we have in the deck is Deathmark, which is a 2-cost aggression upgrade. It allows us to draw 2 cards. This one clearly costs the most. However, it also has a very powerful effect. When Bossk is deployed, if we can defeat a unit with Deathmark, we can draw 4 cards, which is a lot of cards to draw. It does cost the most, and we won't get to play it on turn 1 if we're playing bounty posting. However, we will get to use Deathmark if we have it in our opening hand turn 1. The nice thing as well about bounty posting and Deathmark is that if we do draw it later in the game and we just have a bunch of resources to use, it's going to allow us the ability to just have extra copies of it, and we can play it. Now I want to quickly look at some of the bounties that we could have included, but we chose not to. Up first, we have the upgrade Wanted. 0 cost, and when we defeat or capture the unit, we can ready 2 friendly resources. While this can be beneficial for us to play more things, the timing could be quite awkward at times, especially if our opponent chooses to attack with their unit that has this bounty and defeats it while we don't have any resources untapped. It's because of this lack of control that I find this card not worth including. Up next, we have Enticing Reward. This 1 cost bounty will trigger when we defeat or capture the opponent's unit. When we do so, we can search the top 10 cards of our deck for 2 non-unit cards, and we can draw them. And then there's a part there about if it's unique or not. One of the problems with this card in the deck is, well, it can search out other bounties or bounty posting, and one of the other events that we run. In this deck, we just don't run enough non-units for this card to be worth it. Finally, we have Unrefusable Offer. Unrefusable Offer has a similar effect to the other ones, except it cannot be attached to a leader unit. And when that non-leader unit is captured or defeated, you can play this unit for free, and then at the start of the regroup phase, defeat it. Well, this card can be beneficial. One of its major problems is the fact that we don't get to double it if Bossk is deployed. That's a real feel-bad moment. Looking at these 3 bounties, however, we do see a commonality, and that is they are all the cunning aspect. Most people have been running Bossk with the command aspect as the pairing to go with Bossk. We have chosen to use the cunning aspect, and unfortunately, we haven't used any of the cunning bounties. However, the cunning units will make up for it. Up first, let's look at our turn 1 plays. As we talked about with our bounties, any of our 4 bounty cards can be played on turn 1. With Bossk's ability, we are able to start dealing damage to those opponent's units, even if we just have the bounty as our only play. We do have some units, though, that we can play. The first one is going to be Dengar, which is 1 cost aggression villainy unit. He's a 2/2 underworld bounty hunter. And when we play an upgrade, we can deal 1 damage to that unit. With his 1 cost, we are able to play Dengar. Then when our opponent plays a unit, we can play either bounty posting, grabbing guild target, or if we have rich reward in our hand, we can play that. Both of these times will allow us to trigger Dengar, dealing a damage to the unit. Then we can tap Bossk, and we can deal a 2nd damage to that unit, meaning that we've dealt 2 damage to it. Some units will already be defeated, while other units may only need 1 more potential damage so that they are also defeated. Let's look next at our 2nd unit that costs 1 in the ground arena, which is Greedo, who's a 3/1 underworld bounty hunter. When defeated, we can discard a top card of our deck. If it's not a unit, we can deal 2 damage to a ground unit. One benefit is it does say non-unit, it doesn't say event, and so all of our bounty cards are going to help. Finally, for our turn 1 plays, we've got Mercenary Gunship. Now, this is a 3/2 underworld vehicle fighter. It does have a negative action ability, which costs 4, any player can use, and allows you to take control of this unit. Now, it should be noted, we are playing aggression villainy, which means that we are in the colors to be playing Kylo's TIE Silencer. Kylo's TIE Silencer also costs 2 and is also a 3/2. However, its distinct problem is its type. Its first order type as opposed to Mercenary Gunship's underworld type. Now, often, if our opponent is going to be paying 4 resources to take control of our Mercenary Gunship, we're honestly probably not that upset. And what we gain from playing Mercenary Gunship over the TIE Silencer is this important underworld trait, which we're going to talk about why that's important next here in turn 2. Before we talk about that, though, we are going to quickly mention 2 of cards that are going to benefit from the way we've built our deck. Toro Calicon is a 3-cost 3/5 bounty hunter, which has an effect that when we play another bounty hunter unit, we can deal 1 damage to that unit. If we do, we can ready this unit. While we can only do this ability once each round, this is going to be an important part about how we're choosing some of our units in our deck. There are no bounty hunter space units. However, all of our ground units in this deck are going to be bounty hunters. And so this is going to allow us an ability to ready Toro up and get multiple attacks in. Another one of those units that's going to ready up, which we talked about with Rich Reward, is Punishing One, a 3-cost space unit that's a 3/4. And when an upgraded enemy unit is defeated, you may ready this unit. We can also only use this ability once each round. We don't know what kind of deck our opponent's going to be using, and so whether they'll be using upgrades on their units. However, we benefit from having bounties, which are upgrades. And so when we do the point of our deck, which is using and getting bounties, putting those bounties on our opponent's units, and then either defeating or capturing those units with bounties, this is going to allow Punishing One to ready up and attack them again. Now, I want to talk about why that Underworld trait on Mercenary Gunship and these Bounty Hunter traits are important. And that is because of the card from Twilight of the Republic. Now there are 2 of them. This 3-cost event we can play if we control exactly 1 unit. If we do that, we can play a non-vehicle unit from our hand that shares a trait with the unit you control. It costs 5 less. What this means is that on turn 1, if we played one of those first turn units, and we play, now there are 2 of them, we can play most of the ground units in our deck. The 2 that I've pointed out in particular to get the most value are Zuckuss and Chrysanthemum. Zuckuss is a 5-cost Cunning Villainy unit, which is a 6/6 Underworld Bounty Hunter with Saboteur. And each friendly unit named Forlorn gets +1/+1 and gains Saboteur. This is a huge stat line which we can put on the board on turn 2, attacking turn 3. One of the benefits of this play as well is that means that next turn, on turn 3, we can play Forlorn. Forlorn is a 4-cost 4/4 Underworld Bounty Hunter with Ambush, and it has the ability that each friendly unit named Zuckuss gets +1/+1 and gains Ambush. With Zuckuss on the field on turn 2 and Forlorn attacking on turn 3 because of his ambush, we've got a 5/5 ambush unit, and if Forlorn stays alive, which he most likely will, we've got Zuckuss who's going to be attacking for a 7/7 on turn 3. Basically, the existence of Zuckuss and the potential of Forlorn can be devastating to our opponents, which they're going to want to prioritize removing Zuckuss as soon as possible. The other unit we mentioned is Chrysanthemum, which is a 5-cost 3/7 Underworld Wookiee Bounty Hunter. When played, if an enemy unit has bounty, you may ready this unit. This is where something like our guild target early on in the game can be really helpful because it will allow us to have Chrysanthemum enter ready and ready to attack. Then he's got an on-attack ability where we can choose a ground unit and we can deal 1 damage to it for each damage on this unit. He is going to allow us to take some damage. Being a Wookiee, he's got a really high health pool, and then he's able to deal that damage out to others on our opponent's board. This deck is something that I would describe as a kind of module build, where you can choose how you kind of want to add things onto it. Being a Bossk deck, again, we're going to really want to play bounties. So that's the first kind of modular element, is how many bounties do you want to play? I like to play about 10 myself. The second modular that we're adding on is this now there are 2 of them bounty hunter theme. So Toro is going to benefit from playing bounty hunters, and we have some of the underworld theme as well. A lot of them are underworld. And then we're also getting, now there are 2 of them are going to help us with these trait benefits. This next modular element I want to talk about is the Fett modular element. So on our screen, we've got a must, a maybe, and a modular element in this Fett component. Jango Fett is a great unit in a boss deck because we're going to be giving our opponent's units bounties anyways. And Jango Fett gets a lot stronger and a lot better when our opponents have bounties on them. He's normally a 4-cost 3/6 that when he attacks a unit with bounty, he gains +3, +0, and overwhelm. And when he attacks, defeats a unit, he's going to draw you a card. So our 4 cost can become a 6/6. And what's great is we can play him on turn 3 with 4 resources. And next turn, when we have 5 resources, we can deploy Bossk. And if we've got some bounties on our opponent's units, when Django attacks and claims those bounties, Bossk is going to double them for us. His ability to draw us a card is also a nice buff, and is triggered regardless if the opponent we defeat has bounty. Next up, I have a maybe card. We have Boba Fett, a 3 cost 3/5 that has it on attack. If it's attacking a unit that's exhausted and that didn't enter play this round, it can deal 3 damage to that unit. I have this card as a maybe because, well, it is good. It has been seeing a little less play lately as other cards have taken its spot and we've got other 3/5 units. Its on attack trigger is good when it can be used. However, we're finding opponents that are finding some ways to play around it. So it is a card that I like, however, because I like to include this last element in this Fett category, which is Fett's Fire Spray. Fett's Fire Spray can be used without one of the Fetts as your leader because it's a 6 cost 5/6 space unit, which when played, if you control Boba Fett or Jango Fett as a leader or unit, ready this unit. If you were just playing one of the 2 Fetts, this card probably wouldn't have enough targets to be reliable to come in readied. However, when playing 3 copies of both Jango and Boba, we are able to potentially have plays to have it enter ready. I've been able to do this in a couple of my games, and I have found it quite strong. It's not as reliable, again, as using them as leaders. However, I have found it to be worth it in the deck. Next up, I want to talk about a different component in this deck, and that is Capture. We saw Capture in set 2, and we got one of the best cards from set 3 has this Capture ability. So we have Cad Bane. Cad Bane, 7 cost 7/7, that when we play it, we can capture up to 3 enemy non-leader units with a total of 8 or less remaining HP. So first off, no matter what else we have, by just playing this card, we are going to get rid of a ton of our opponent's units. If those are token units, they're now gone forever. As well, he is an Underworld and Bounty Hunter, meaning that if we only have 1 unit on the board and we're at 5 resources, we can play Now There Are 2 of them, discounting Cad by 5, meaning he only costs 2 more, and we could pay that last 2 resources to play out Cad Bane. It should be noted that our leader, Bossk, deploys at 5. So it is possible that if we have an empty board, we can deploy Bossk, and then as our next action, play Now There Are 2 of them, and play out Cad Bane on turn 4. This is going to be one of the ways where, though we don't have hard ramp, we are going to be using these sneaky kind of plays to get out these big units. Cad also has an ability that on attack, the defending player can rescue one of the cards that we have guarded by this unit. If they do, draw 2 cards. So that can be a negative, especially if this is the thing that's holding them from winning back. 1, we don't have to attack with Cad if it's that desperate. And 2, the payoff for us is we do still get to draw 2 cards. Capture as a mechanic is important to be looked at as we're not removing the unit, but we're just temporarily delaying that unit being on the board. One of the important things about this is Star Wars Unlimited really rewards you for playing on curve. And so if we are removing their units from the turns which they're good, which is when they are played on curve, we're able to kind of minimize the value that they provide. Up next in this capture module, we have Relentless Pursuit. It's a 3 cost event card, which we can choose a friendly unit and capture an enemy non-leader unit that costs the same or less as it. If the friendly unit is a bounty hunter, give a shield token to it. All of our ground units are going to be bounty hunters. No, as we said earlier, no space units are bounty hunters, so they won't get the shield. But the nice thing about this card is it allows us to capture cross arena. So one of our ground units can capture a space unit, one of our space units can capture a ground unit. It's always great if we're giving one of our units a shield, including our leader, a shield, because of this card. It should be noted, however, one of the downsides of this card is that the unit we're capturing has to cost the same or less as the unit that's doing the capturing. This can potentially be a burden. However, the ability to do it cross arena which is relatively unique, and the ability to give one of our bounty hunters a shield, from my experience, is make this a must-include card. Again, especially putting that shield counter on Bossk. Finally, if you want to really lean into this capture mechanic, the modular element of this area of the deck is, I would say, Dryden Voss, who's a 5/7 shielded for 7, and when played, choose a captured card guarded by a unit you control. You may play it for free under your control. So if you can, now there are 2 of them out, a Cad Bane on turn when you have 6 resources, and then next turn play a Dryden Voss, you can take one of the units that you've captured with Cad and then bring it out on the field under your control. This can be a high-risk, high-reward play, as Dryden Voss otherwise as a 5/7 shielded for 7 really is not enough value. He is the Underworld trait, so he is also able to be, now there are 2 of them out, especially if a Relentless Pursuit was played earlier. One of the fears I have about that is, are you getting to play a big enough unit out to make it worth it? Those are all the cards to kind of talk about as an overview of the different styles and different ways which this deck can be built. As we see in my deck, I've chosen to lean into the Fett mode and included 3 Boba Fetts. I've included 3 Jango Fetts and 2 Fetts Fire Sprays. I've decided not to include Dryden Voss because I find that without the pre-captured unit, he is really lackluster. So while I include 3 Relentless Pursuits and 3 Cad Banes, I do not have the Dryden Voss to kind of use those captured units to my advantage. As I said, I like to include 10 copies of bounties, and I do include bounty posting as one of those bounties. So we've got a total of 10 there. 3 guild targets, because they're free, they're great if we need it in a pinch to get with bounty posting, 2 death marks, and 2 rich rewards. And these are the rest of the cards in the deck. So I hope you've enjoyed this video with some information on playing Cunning Bossk. It's something that I really have had fun with. And again, compared to Command, which more people have been playing because they got the ramp, they get to play some of those bigger units, we have sneaky ways to take advantage of our traits and to bring out big units of our own in sneaky ways and to take advantage of those traits. So thank you guys very much for watching. I look forward to hearing your comments in the description below.